Every morning starts the same way. Yvette rattles the dishes in the kitchen as if she's trying to wake me up early. 7 a.m. is the time when normal retirees are still on their 10th nap, and I have to wake up to this infernal rattling. For 37 years, I've been getting up at 5 in the morning to drive my truck. 37 years I dreamed of sleeping through lunch when I retired. And the result? A daughter who thinks it's her duty to get the whole house up at first light. My name is Orson Packard. 67 years, 42 of which I've worked as a truck driver, traveling all over the states from Maine to California. I now live in my home in Springfield, an ordinary one-story house with a basement that I inherited from my parents. After Helen, my wife, died, I lived alone for almost 7 years, enjoyed the quiet, the freedom, and the peace. But 3 years ago, Yvette decided her father was too old to live on his own. She gave up her apartment across town and moved in with me. "Dad, breakfast is ready," she yells from the kitchen, even though she knows I'm awake because of her fussing. "I'm coming," I said, struggling to get out of bed. My bedroom is the only place in the house that hasn't been improved by Yvette. There are pictures of Helen, old mechanics books, and road maps everywhere. Anything that reminds me of my old life. Yvette keeps offering to freshen up the interior, but I stand to die. If she gets to my room with her ideas about minimalism and Scandinavian style, I'll have to move to the basement. There's oatmeal waiting for me in the kitchen. It's that flavorless porridge again. Yvette claims it's good for my cholesterol. I don't give a damn about cholesterol at my age. "Good morning, Dad," she smiles, setting the plates on the table. "How'd you sleep?" "Fine, until you started rattling the pans," I grumble, sitting down at the table. Yvette sighs but doesn't say anything. She's used to my morning moods, 41 years old and still hoping I'll change. Naive like her mother in her day. "I was thinking about your birthday," she says, pouring me coffee. "It's this Saturday. Why don't we have a little party? Invite Aunt Pearl, Louis and his wife, maybe some of your old friends from the motor pool." "Why?" I look at her over my coffee cup. "So everyone can look at me with pity and tell me how good I look for my age? No, thanks." "Dad, it's just a birthday. People come over to congratulate you, give you presents, eat cake." "I don't want cake either. Sugar gives me heartburn." Yvette bites her lip, a sure sign that she's holding back from saying something harsh. Her light red hair is tied back in a careless bun, and she doesn't have a trace of makeup on her face. When she was young, she was a carbon copy of Helen, the same green eyes, the freckles on her nose, the soft smile. Now I see more of me in her, a stubborn chin, a wrinkle between her eyebrows from constant tension, the tired look of someone who's carrying too much on her shoulders. "I've already invited the guests," she finally says. 8 people in all. We'll sit in the living room, talk, eat. No big celebrations." "And who are the lucky ones?" I ask sarcastically. "Aunt Pearl, Louis and Nancy, Roy from your motor pool and his wife, my colleague Brent and his wife, and Bill Quincy, your old neighbor." "Bill?" I raise my eyebrows in surprise. "I mean, he moved to Oakville 5 years ago. He's in town now, visiting his daughter. I met him at the supermarket and he was really excited about the invitation." I hum, but I feel a slight thrill inside. Bill was the only neighbor I had a normal relationship with. He stayed out of my life, didn't give me advice on how to live my life, and was always willing to help me fix my car. "Okay," I reluctantly agreed, "but no balloons, party hats, and other nonsense, and the cake has to be creamless." Yvette's face brightens. "Sure, Dad, it'll be modest and mature." After breakfast, I retire to the garage, the one place Yvette hardly ever appears. Here I can go about my business without the constant remarks about clutter and dust. Right now, I'm working on an old radio I found at a garage sale 2 months ago. Yvette thinks it's a waste of time, but I like rummaging through old equipment, bringing things back to life that everyone else has given up on. A couple hours later, Yvette comes into the garage. "Dad, I'm going to the store to get groceries for your party. Do you need anything?" "Get some beer," I answer, keeping my eyes on my work. "Dad, you know you can't have alcohol with your medication. One bottle won't kill me," Dr. Reeves said. "Screw Dr. Reeves." I raise my head and look at her. "I'm turning 67 and I want to have a beer for my birthday. Is that a crime?" Yvette sighs. "Okay, I'll buy a non-alcoholic one." Before I can object, she closes the door. It's always like that, pretending to give in and then doing it her way anyway, just like her mother. After lunch, I go down to the basement under the pretense of looking for the old photo albums Yvette asked me about. In fact, I need to see if the secret exit I installed almost 30 years ago still works. Our basement isn't just a damp storage area for canned goods and old junk. When Helen and I first bought this house, I spent months fixing it up. I insulated the walls, made good lighting, ran a separate line of electricity. In the 80s, when everyone was afraid of nuclear war, I'd even set up a sort of bomb shelter here, a stockpile of canned goods, a first aid kit, a self-contained generator. Helen laughed at my paranoia, but didn't interfere. That's when I made the secret exit. In the far corner of the basement, behind an old closet, there's a door that leads into a narrow tunnel. I dug it myself, working at night so the neighbors wouldn't notice. The tunnel leads out to the far corner of the garden behind an old apple tree, where I installed a small manhole disguised as a sewer. You'd never guess from the outside that it was an emergency exit from the house. I pushed the closet aside. It moves on hidden casters that I had specially installed. The door behind it is covered in dust and cobwebs. I haven't opened it in years. The key still hangs on a nail nearby, hidden behind an old U.S. map. The lock doesn't give in right away, but after a few tries, the door creaks open. The air in the tunnel is musty but dry. I turn on the flashlight on my phone and illuminate the passage. The earthen walls are reinforced with wooden beams and the floor is lined with old boards. Everything looks sturdy enough despite the years. I walk a few meters, checking for cave-ins or other obstacles. The tunnel has settled a bit on one side, but overall it's fine. I don't go to the hatch. It's too far, and I don't want to get dirty. Back in the basement, I carefully lock the door and put the closet back where it belongs. Yvette doesn't know anything about the secret exit, and I've never told her about it. Helen knew, of course, but thought it was a harmless quirk of mine. I find the photo albums Yvette was asking about and go upstairs. She's already back from the store and is organizing the groceries in the cupboards. "Found them," I say, putting the albums on the table. "What do you need them for?" "I want to make a slideshow for your birthday. Show pictures from different years. How you grew up, went to school, got married, how I was born." "Don't make it into a snotty drama," I interrupt her. "I don't want everyone to look at me and sigh at how young and handsome I was, and now I've turned into an old grump." "Dad, it's just pictures. People will be interested." "People will be embarrassed," I objected. "But do what you want. You won't listen to me anyway." Yvette presses her lips together but doesn't say anything. I notice that she bought a non-alcoholic beer, as promised. Predictable. In the evening, as we sit in front of the TV, Yvette asks, "Dad, what would you like to get as a birthday present, I wonder? What do I want? A new life? A return to my youth? A few more years with Helen? None of these things will be given to me." "I don't need anything," I answered. "I already have everything I need." "But there must be something to make you happy, right?" "You know what would make me happy? If you'd stop treating me like a helpless old man. I've lived 67 years, driven millions of miles, survived the Vietnam War, raised you, buried my wife. I know what I'm doing." Yvette looks at me with surprise. "I don't treat you like you're helpless." "You don't? Who's stopping me from drinking beer? Who makes me eat this tasteless porridge every morning? Who keeps reminding me to take my meds like I can't take care of myself?" "I'm just taking care of you," she says quietly. "I don't need a babysitter. I need a daughter who respects my right to live the life I want. Yvette gets up and leaves the room without saying a word. I hear her walk up the stairs and the door to her room closes. I know I hurt her feelings, but I can't bring myself to apologize. Because I'm right, damn it. I'm left alone in front of the TV with some stupid show on that I don't watch. My mind is spinning with thoughts of the upcoming birthday party, of the guests who will arrive with fake smiles and polite congratulations, of Bill, who may be the only one who will be genuinely happy to see me, about Yvette, who tries her best and gets only reproaches and criticism. Maybe I really have become an insufferable old man. Maybe Helen was right when she said that as I get older I'm becoming more and more like my father, a grouchy, dissatisfied man who has alienated everyone close to him. No, I'm just a realist. I see things as they are, unadorned and without illusions. And if people don't like it, that's their problem, not mine. With that thought, I turn off the TV and go to bed, feeling the familiar weight of loneliness on my shoulders, a loneliness that hasn't gone away even after Yvette moved in with me. The morning of my birthday began with the smell of baking. Yvette had gotten up at 6 in the morning to start cooking. I could hear her walking quietly around the kitchen, trying not to make any noise, but it woke me up anyway. I don't know why she's in such a hurry. The guests aren't due until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and she's already fiddling with pies and salads. I lay in bed, looking up at the ceiling and thinking about turning 67. 67. When I was young, people that age seemed like ancient old men. Now I'm one myself, though inside I still feel like the same Orson who, at 20, got behind the wheel of his first truck and set off across the country. There was a quiet knock at the door. "Dad, are you awake?" Yvette's voice sounded unusually soft. "I have a surprise for you." "Come in," I answered, rising from the bed. Yvette came in holding a tray of breakfast. A real breakfast, not oatmeal, but scrambled eggs and bacon, toast, orange juice, and a cup of strong coffee. "Happy birthday, Dad," she smiled, setting the tray on my lap. "Today is your day, so no dieting." I was surprised. Yvette was usually strict about my diet, making me eat healthy foods that would make a normal person's jaw drop. "Thank you," I said, trying to hide my surprise. "This looks delicious." "Eat it while it's hot," she said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "How did you sleep on the last night of your 66th birthday?" "Fine," I shrugged, starting to eat. Age is just a number. Nothing will change from turning 67. "Still, it's a special day." Yvette adjusted my pillow. "I want you to have a good time with the guests. They're all very anxious to see you." "Yeah, especially your co-worker Brent, who's only seen me once in his life," I chuckled. "Brent's a very interesting man. You said he's the only person I know who's not boring to talk to," Yvette reminded me. "And his wife Tabitha makes amazing pies." "I hope she doesn't bring one of her healthy, sugar-free, flourless pies," I grumbled, but the scrambled eggs were so delicious that my grumbling sounded lame. Yvette only smiled and got out of bed. "I need to get back to the kitchen. Get dressed and come downstairs when you're ready." After breakfast, I went downstairs and found that Yvette had already put up some modest decorations around the living room, a garland with the letters "Happy Birthday," and a few pictures of me in different years of my life. Nothing flashy or childish, but tasteful. "I asked for no decorations," I said, pointing to the garland. "They're not decorations, just a reminder to the guests why they're here," Yvette replied, still chopping vegetables. "Without them, the room would look too ordinary." "That's the point. A birthday is no reason to turn the house into a circus." Yvette took a deep breath but didn't say anything. I saw her squeeze the knife a little harder, but she continued slicing cucumbers for the salad. Her patience scares me sometimes. Helen would have told me what she thought of my whining a long time ago. I walked around the living room, looking at the pictures. Here I am in my army uniform before I shipped out to Vietnam, young, serious, straight-looking. Here's Helen and me on our wedding day. She in a simple white dress, me in the only suit I had. Here's little Yvette sitting on my shoulders at the amusement park. Here's the three of us in front of my first truck of my own. Where did you get these pictures? I asked, looking at one of the pictures of me and my partner Roy standing next to a truck somewhere in Montana. I found them in those albums you brought from the basement, Yvette replied. I think people might be interested in seeing your life in pictures. People or you? I couldn't help but be witty. Everyone, Dad. You've lived an interesting life, traveled a lot, seen the country. Not everyone can boast of that. It was just a job. I shrugged, but inside I felt a strange warmth that Yvette was proud of my life. For the next few hours, I watched Yvette transform our modest home into a place to host guests. She arranged chairs and armchairs in a semicircle in the living room, set the dining room table, and pulled out the best dishes we don't normally use. A small cake with no cream appeared on the center table, just like I asked for, just a sponge with fruit. You're not helping, you're just getting in the way, Yvette finally said when I commented for the third time on the arrangement of the plates on the table. Why don't you watch TV or read a book? This is my house, and I have the right to go wherever I want, I replied. And if I see you putting your wine glasses too close to the edge of the table, I have to tell you. Dad, I've organized office events for 100 people. Trust me, I can handle dinner for 8 guests. Office workers are not the same as Pearl. She dropped her glass last Christmas, in case you've forgotten. I haven't forgotten, Yvette replied patiently. So I'll put a plastic glass in front of her and pour juice instead of wine. I wanted to object, but at that moment the doorbell rang. The first guests. Yvette quickly wiped her hands on her apron and went to open the door. It was Louis and his wife, Nancy, my cousin, and his ever-smiling wife. Louis looked like me, just as tall, with large features, only his hair was still dark, unlike my gray. Orson, you old stump! Louis gave me a big hug. Happy birthday! How do you manage to look younger every year? Don't flatter me, Louis, I grumbled, but I shook his hand. We both know I look like an old stump. Nonsense, Nancy exclaimed, kissing me on the cheek. You look great. You've lost a little weight, though. Yvette, are you feeding your father well? Too well, I answered in my daughter's place. She feeds me oatmeal every morning. Oatmeal is good for the heart, Nancy said. My doctor says... Spare me your doctor's advice, I interrupted. I have enough doctors of my own. Louis laughed and patted me on the shoulder. Same old Orson. You don't change over the years. Come into the living room, Yvette took the lead. I was just finishing getting ready. No sooner were we settled in the living room than the next guests arrived. Aunt Pearl, my mother's 79-year-old sister, and my old friend Roy and his wife, Dorothy. Pearl, as always, was dressed in all purple, her favorite color, and was carrying a huge box wrapped in shiny paper. Orson, my dear boy, she exclaimed, hugging me. She smelled of lavender perfume and mothballs. 67 years. I remember holding you in my arms when you were a baby. I don't think so, Aunt Pearl, I said. You were living in New Jersey when I was born, and you didn't come until I was 3. Never mind, she said. What matters is that I remember you as a little boy, and now you're an old man just like me. Thanks for the reminder, I mumbled. Roy, my partner from the motor pool, shook my hand firmly. Happy birthday, old man. Didn't think we'd live to be this old, huh? Especially after that night in Oklahoma, I grinned, remembering how we'd almost flipped over on the icy road. Oh, God, don't tell that story again, Dorothy moaned, rolling her eyes. I've heard it 100 times. You'll hear it 100 more, Roy winked at her. It's a classic. The last to arrive were Brent and his wife, Tabitha, and Bill Quincy, my former neighbor. Bill had aged the most, hunched over and graying, but his eyes remained as clear and penetrating as ever. Orson, you haven't changed at all, he said, shaking my hand. You're a good liar, I grinned. How's life in Oakville? Quiet, peaceful, boring. Bill shrugged. just the way I wanted it to be. Yvette gathered everyone in the living room, where snacks and drinks were already set out. She put on some soft music, the old hits from the 60s and 70s that I used to love. "Before we sit down at the table," Yvette announced, "I'd like to show you a little slideshow I've prepared." She turned on the television and pictures of my life appeared on the screen, accompanied by music. Baby Orson in his mother's arms, little Orson on a bicycle, teenage Orson with his father near an old pickup truck, high school graduation, army, marriage to Helen, Yvette's birth, my first truck, traveling across the country, family holidays, Helen in the hospital shortly before she died. This photo pricked my heart. And finally, a recent shot of me in a rocking chair on the porch, book in hand, immersed in reading. Everyone watched with interest, sometimes exclaiming or commenting on particularly good photos. I tried to look indifferent, but inside I felt a strange excitement. My life flashing before my eyes in a few minutes, long, full of events, but somehow seeming so short. "That was beautiful, Yvette," Nancy said when the slideshow was over. "You did a great job." "Thank you," Yvette smiled. "Now let's move to the table. Lunch is ready." We sat down at the dining room table. Yvette had prepared a real holiday meal: baked chicken, mashed potatoes, several kinds of salads, fresh bread. And to my surprise, a bottle of real beer stood next to my plate. "You bought a proper beer after all," I remarked, picking up the bottle. "One won't hurt," Yvette shrugged. "But only one." The dinner passed in a relaxed atmosphere. The guests recalled stories from the past, discussed the latest news, asked me about my projects in the garage. I tried to be polite, but when Pearl began to tell me for the third time the story of how her cat had torn the new curtains, I couldn't take it anymore. "Pearl, we've all heard about your cat," I interrupted her. "Why don't we talk about something more interesting?" There was an awkward silence at the table. Pearl looked hurt, and Yvette gave me a warning look. "Dad, Aunt Pearl is just sharing the news," she said tautly. "We're all glad to hear it." "Speak for yourself," I mumbled. "I heard that story about the cat and the curtains last Christmas, Easter, and now my birthday. If the cat is still pulling the same curtains, maybe we should just replace them." "Orson!" Yvette exclaimed. "It's all right, dear," Pearl patted Yvette's arm. "Your father was always straightforward. It's a family trait. Your grandfather was the same way." "Don't compare me to that old man," I grumbled. "He was an unbearable tyrant." "And the apple doesn't fall from the tree," Lewis said quietly, but everyone heard. I turned to him sharply. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." Lewis held up his hands in a protective gesture. "Just a joke." "A lousy joke," I snapped back. "I'm nothing like my father." "Of course not," Yvette interjected, trying to lighten the mood. "Who wants dessert? We have fruitcake and creamless cake, just the way you like it, Dad. But I'm getting a little carried away." The comparison with my father struck a nerve, the man who ruined my childhood with his cruelty and coldness. "Do you know what my father did?" I looked around the table. "He'd lock me in the closet all day if I got a bad grade in school. He made me sleep in the garage in the winter when I was late for dinner. He never once said he was proud of me or loved me, so no, Lewis, I'm nothing like him." "Dad, please," Yvette put her hand on my shoulder. "It's your birthday today. Let's not talk about sad things." "Then what is it?" I dropped her hand. "The weather? Politics?" "About how nice and fun it is for all of us to sit here and pretend we're one big happy family." "Orson," Bill looked me straight in the eye, "we're here because we appreciate you, all of us." "Do we really?" I grinned. "You moved to Oakville and haven't called me in 5 years. Lewis only comes up on holidays, and that's at Yvette's insistence. Roy only thinks of me when his wife goes to her sister's and he gets bored. And Brent doesn't know me at all. He's only here because he works with Yvette." "It's not fair," Yvette said quietly. "Everyone came to congratulate you." "They came to eat free food and gossip," I cut her off. And you arranged all this because you're afraid the neighbors will think you're a bad daughter if you don't give your father a party. Yvette's face turned pale. She got up from the table. "Excuse me," she said to the guests. "I need to check something in the kitchen." She left the room. There was a heavy silence at the table. "You're overreacting, Orson," Bill finally said. "Yvette's doing the best she can." "Mind your own business," I snapped back, but I felt a twinge of conscience inside. "This is between me and my daughter." Yvette returned a few minutes later, but she didn't sit down at the table. "Dad," she said in a strained voice, "could you help me in the basement? I think there's something wrong with the water heater." "Now?" I raised my eyebrows in surprise. "In the middle of lunch?" "I hear a strange sound, and I think there's steam coming out of it. I'm afraid it might flood." I sighed and got up from the table. "Excuse me," I mumbled to the guests. "Family business." Yvette ushered me forward down the stairs to the basement. I went down, turned on the light, and walked over to the water heater in the far corner. No steam, no strange noises. "Everything's fine here," I said, turning around. "You're something—" But Yvette was no longer on the stairs. I heard the door slam shut at the top of the stairs, and the lock clicked. For a few seconds I stood in a daze, not believing my ears. Then I rushed to the stairs and ran up the steps. "Yvette!" I pulled the handle, but the door was locked. "Open it at once! Sit down and don't move!" Yvette's voice sounded muffled through the door, but there was a determination I hadn't noticed before. "You've ruined enough holidays for one lifetime." "Yvette, this isn't funny. Open the door now." "No. Sit there and think about your behavior. Maybe it'll teach you to appreciate the people who care about you." I heard her footsteps moving away from the door, and then her voice to the guests. "I'm sorry, but the party's over. Daddy's not feeling well. He needs to rest. Thank you for coming." I couldn't believe my ears. My own daughter had locked me in the basement like a naughty child. I pounded on the door, screamed, demanded that she open it, but there was only silence. After a while, I heard the guests saying goodbye, the front door slamming, cars starting up and leaving. Yvette had locked me in the basement on my own birthday, and from the looks of it, she wasn't going to let me out anytime soon. I stood in the basement, unable to believe what was happening. I, Orson Packard, had been locked up by my own daughter, on my birthday, in my own home. Rage filled my eyes. I ran to the door again and pounded my fist with force. "Yvette, open this damn door right now!" My voice echoed off the concrete walls of the basement. Silence. Either she was gone, or she was deliberately ignoring me. I listened. There were muffled voices coming from upstairs, which meant that not all the guests had left. Maybe one of them would talk some sense into Yvette and get her to open the door. I was about to yell again, but I stopped myself. No, I'm not going to give them a reason to make fun of an old man locked in the basement. I have dignity, damn it. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down and assess the situation. The basement is a large room, well lit, with concrete walls and floor. In the far corner is a water heater and washing machine. Along the walls are shelves of tools, canned goods, old things. In another corner is an old closet that hides my secret exit. A secret exit. I grinned. Yvette thought she'd locked me in, but she didn't know about the door I'd rigged nearly 30 years ago. Now this tunnel, which seemed like empty paranoia to everyone, would be my path to freedom. I walked over to the old closet and pushed it aside. It moved easily on hidden casters. Behind it, I found a door painted the same gray as the basement walls. I removed the key from the nail hidden behind the map and inserted it into the lock. It was a little tricky, it hadn't been used in a while, but after a few tries the lock clicked, and the door opened. There was a narrow tunnel in front of me, lit by dim, battery-powered bulbs. I'd once envisioned off-grid power, in case the power went out. Clever, although Helen had laughed at my foresight at the time. I wonder what she'd say now. I stepped into the tunnel, closing the door behind me. The air was musty but dry. The tunnel stretched for about 10 meters, gradually rising upward. In some places, the earthen walls had settled, but the wooden beams I'd reinforced them with still held the ceiling firmly in place. The tunnel was designed for a 30-year-old me, not for the present one with a bad back and stiff joints. After a few minutes, I reached the hatch that led to the garden behind the house. I carefully lifted the lid and looked out. The hatch was well disguised as an ordinary garden hatch and was behind an old apple tree in the furthest corner of the property. I couldn't see the house or the street from here, just the fence of the neighboring property. I climbed out, being careful not to make any noise, and carefully closed the hatch. The sun was blinding my eyes after the darkness of the basement. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a warm summer evening. In another situation, I probably would have just sat on a bench in the garden and enjoyed the weather. But now I had other plans. I walked quietly around the house, trying to stay close to the bushes so I couldn't be seen from the windows. At the side window of the living room, I stopped and listened. There were voices inside, which meant someone was still there. The window was ajar for ventilation. It was a hot day, and the air conditioner in the living room had been acting up lately. I cautiously crept closer and peered inside, trying to stay invisible behind the curtain. In the living room sat Yvette, Bill, Brent and his wife, and Aunt Pearl. The others had apparently already left. Yvette sat in a chair with her hands over her face. Her shoulders were shaking, she was crying. The others surrounded her, obviously trying to comfort her. "Don't cry, dear," Aunt Pearl said, stroking Yvette's back. "He's always been like this. It's not your fault. I tried so hard." Yvette's voice trembled. "Cooked his favorite meals, bought real beer even though I know he can't have it with his meds, made a slideshow. And he still found something to pick on, like he always does." "You didn't do anything wrong," Bill said, shaking his head. "Orson, he'd just gotten really bitter after Helen died. He's always been a bit difficult, but the last few years it's gotten worse." "It's not just that." Yvette looked up. Her face was red from crying, her eyes swollen shut. "He'd always been like that. Mom just knew how to handle him. She knew how to calm him down when he started to grumble, how to distract him when he was angry. And I don't. I'm just patient." "You've been putting up with it too long, Tabitha," Brent's wife remarked. 3 years of living with him, taking care of him, and all you get in return is criticism and resentment. It's not normal, Yvette." "But he's my father," Yvette objected weakly. "I can't leave him, especially after I promised my mom I'd take care of him." "Your mom didn't expect you to sacrifice your life," Brent said softly. "She wanted you to be happy." "I'm not happy," Yvette grinned bitterly. "I hardly ever see my friends because he's always unhappy when I go out. I can't invite anyone home because he's rude to everyone I know. I haven't even been on a date in 2 years. What man would want to get involved with a woman who has a father like that?" I stood there like a thunderstorm. Did she really think that? Had I really screwed up her life that badly? "Do you know what the most hurtful thing is?" Yvette continued, wiping away her tears. "I'm really trying to make his life better. I cook him healthy meals because I'm worried about his health. I remind him about his medications because I'm afraid he'll forget to take them and something will happen to him. I organized this party because I wanted him to feel that he is cared for, that he is not alone, and he sees it all as trying to control his life. He's always been independent," Bill pointed out. "I remember when he was young, he could get in a truck and go away for weeks at a time, just because he was tired of sitting in one place. Helen was used to that. She was just as independent. But as you get older, it's hard for a person to accept that they can no longer do everything they used to." "I understand that," Yvette nodded. "But he won't even let me help him. He takes any help as an insult, as if I'm trying to prove that he's helpless." "And what about today?" Aunt Pearl asked. "Locking him in the cellar, don't you think that was too much?" Yvette sighed. "I guess, but I just couldn't take it. For 3 years I've put up with his nagging, his constant resentment, his rudeness to my friends and colleagues. And today, when he started insulting you, my guess, I snapped. I needed some time away from him to calm down. And what are you going to do next? Brent asked. You can't keep him in the basement forever. I know, Yvette smiled weakly. I'll let him out in an hour or two when I've calmed down. I'll bring him dinner and apologize for my outburst. And then it'll be business as usual. Maybe it's time for a change, Tabitha suggested gently. Maybe it would be better for you both to live apart. How? Yvette waved her hands. He can't live alone. He has problems with his blood pressure, with his heart. He forgets to take his medication if I don't remind him. He can leave the stove on or leave the door unlocked. And I can't quit my job to visit him several times a day. There are other options, Bill said quietly. Nursing homes, for example. Oh no, Yvette shook her head. He'll never agree to that. He'd rather die than move into an almshouse, as he calls them. What if it wasn't a nursing home, but some sort of a community for the elderly, Brent suggested. You know, places where everyone has their own house or apartment, but there's a common area, medical staff, organized recreation. That sounds good, Yvette said thoughtfully. But still, he would never agree to sell the house and move. What if Aunt Pearl began, but stopped short. Her gaze went past Yvette, right to the window where I was standing. I thought she saw me and I instinctively recoiled. But she just seemed to be looking toward the window, not noticing me behind the curtain. What if we tried to compromise? She finished her thought. Maybe a nurse to come in during the day while you're at work? He'd kick out any nurse on the first day, Yvette sighed. You know how he is. What about moving in with Louis? Pearl suggested. He and Nancy live in a big house. They have a guest house on the property. Louis and Orson would kill each other in a week, Bill grinned. They didn't get along when they were kids, and they don't even get along now. Yvette wiped away her tears again and straightened in her chair. I'll think of something. Maybe I'll have a serious talk with him when he calms down. Explain that this can't go on like this, that I'm human too, that I have feelings, that I'm tired of his constant nagging and rudeness. And you think he'll understand? Tabitha asked skeptically. I don't know, Yvette answered honestly, but I have to try. Otherwise I'll just break down. I can't live like this anymore. Every day I wake up thinking that today he's going to be unhappy with everything I do again. Every day hearing how inept, ineffective, clueless, clingy I am. Every day to feel guilty that I can't make him happy, can't replace his mom. She cried again, covering her face with her hands. Aunt Pearl put her arm around her shoulders. Hush, darling. Everything's going to be all right. No, Yvette sobbed. It won't. He'll never change. He'll be the same grumpy, disgruntled, rude man until he dies. And I'll be there, trying to please him and getting nothing but criticism in return. Because I'm his daughter, because I promised my mom, because no matter what, I still love him. Those words hit me harder than anything else. She still loves me despite the way I treat her, despite the fact that I've made her life a living hell. I didn't notice as I took a step back and stepped on a dry branch. The cracking sound seemed to echo throughout the garden. Inside the living room, everyone went silent. What was that? Tabitha asked, looking around. Probably the neighbor's cat, said Brent. I saw him wandering around the yard when we arrived, but Yvette had already gotten up from her chair and was heading for the window. Before I could recoil, she pulled back the curtain and saw me standing just a few feet away. Our gazes met. Her eyes widened with surprise and fear. Her face, already pale with tears, turned white as chalk. Daddy, she whispered. How did you? I didn't let her finish. I turned around and headed for the front door. It wasn't locked. Yvette never locked it during the day. I entered the house and walked briskly into the living room. Everyone froze when they saw me. Aunt Pearl put her hand to her mouth. Bill rose from the couch. Brent and Tabitha exchanged worried glances. But I only had eyes for Yvette. She was standing at the window, still holding onto the curtain with an expression of absolute horror on her face. "How did you get out?" she finally asked in a shaky voice. "I have my secrets," I answered in an even tone. "Like a secret way out of the basement that you didn't know about." "A secret way out?" she asked incredulously. "Yes. I made it 30 years ago when we first bought the house. In case of nuclear war or other disasters." I grinned. "I never thought I'd use it to get away from my own daughter." Yvette bit her lip, clearly not knowing what to say. The others were silent as well, sensing the tension between us. "I heard your conversation," I continued. "The whole conversation. About how hard it is for you to live with me, about how I'm ruining your life, about how you can't see your friends or go on dates because of me, about how you're tired of my nagging and rudeness." Yvette's face turned even paler, if that was even possible. She looked like she was about to faint. "Dad, and you know what?" I interrupted her. "You're right." There was a heavy silence in the room. My words, "you're right," sounded strange, even to me. When was the last time I acknowledged someone's rightness? I don't even remember. Yvette stared at me wide-eyed, clearly not believing her ears. The rest of the group stood stunned, too. Aunt Pearl was the first to break the silence. "Maybe we should leave. This is a family conversation." "No." I held up my hand to stop her. "Stay. You've heard half of it anyway. You can hear the rest." I turned to Yvette. She looked small and vulnerable, just as she had when I'd caught her in the act as a child. But now the misbehavior was on my conscience, not hers. "I've been insufferable," I said, surprised at my own honesty. "Not just today. All this time. 3 years you've been living with me, taking care of me, putting up with my nagging, and not once have I ever thanked you." Yvette opened her mouth to say something, but I continued. "No, let me finish. I heard what you said. I'm poisoning your life. I'm keeping you from seeing your friends, scaring away your acquaintances. I criticize everything you do, and yet you're still here, taking care of me. You throw me parties even though you know I'll ruin them." "Dad, You don't have to make excuses," I interrupted her. "I'm the one who should be making excuses. But I won't. Because there's no excuse for the way I treated you." I walked over to the chair and sank heavily into it. Suddenly I felt very old and very tired. "You know, I've always thought I deserved respect," I continued, looking somewhere past Yvette. "I've worked all my life, provided for my family, built this house, raised you. I thought that gave me the right to demand. Demand what? Obedience. Unconditional acceptance of my every whim. I don't know. I just knew I was right and everyone else was wrong." I was quiet for a moment, collecting my thoughts. No one interrupted me. Everyone sat there holding their breath. "Your mother knew how to handle me," I finally continued. "She knew when to give in and when to stand her ground. She wasn't afraid to tell me I was wrong. And I listened to her. Not always, but I listened. And when she died, it was like I lost my compass. No one to tell me when I was out of line." "I tried," Yvette said quietly. "But you never listened to me the way you listened to Mom. Because you were a child in my eyes," I grinned bitterly. "You still are, even though you're in your 40s. I couldn't accept that my little girl had grown up and had the right to tell me what to do, especially in my own house." "I didn't," Yvette countered, a hint of irritation in her voice. "I was just looking out for you. Your health, your comfort." "Caring can feel like control," Bill interjected, "especially for someone as independent as Orson." "Independent?" Yvette turned sharply toward him. "He can't take his own medicine regularly. He forgets to turn off the stove. He once went outside in a 30-degree frost without a jacket because he's not cold. That's not independence, that's stubbornness that could kill him." Her voice shook with restrained emotion. I'd never seen her like this, usually calm and rational. She was on the verge of a breakdown. "You're right, Bill," she continued, not letting him answer. "I'm in control." I follow him around the house, making sure he turns off the gas, closes the door, takes his pills. I cook him healthy meals because otherwise he'll eat canned and convenience foods. I remind him about doctor's appointments because he forgets about them. I do all of this not because I want to control his life, but because I'm afraid for him. She turned to me and I saw tears in her eyes. You think I like being your babysitter? You think I dreamed of going back to my parents' house at 41 and making sure my father didn't start a fire by forgetting to turn off the oven? You think I wouldn't want to live my own life? Then why are you here? I asked quietly. Why didn't you leave when it became clear what I'd become? Because I promised my mom, her voice trembled. On her deathbed, I promised her that I would take care of you, that I wouldn't leave you alone, that I'd be there for you when you needed help. Yvette, Aunt Pearl put her hand on her shoulder. Helen didn't want you to sacrifice your life for your father. She wanted you to be happy. I know. Yvette wiped away her tears. But how can I be happy knowing he's here alone, unattended, possibly in danger? How can I enjoy life when every phone call could be from the hospital or from the neighbors saying something has happened to him? She turned to me again, and now there was not only sadness, but anger in her gaze. You know what the most frustrating part is? I'm really trying to make your life better. I'm trying to make compromises. I give in to you in little things to avoid conflict. I put up with your insults and rudeness, your constant reminders that I'm doing everything wrong. And what do I get in return? Nothing. No gratitude, no recognition, not even a simple thanks for dinner, Yvette. Nothing. Her words hit me like a hammer to the head. Every phrase was a truth I couldn't escape. I sacrificed my love life for you, she continued, tears streaming down her cheeks now. I turned down a promotion at work because the new position would have required more time and travel. I stopped going out with friends because I can't leave you alone for long. I didn't go on a date with a man I really liked because I knew you wouldn't be happy and would make a scene if he came to our house. I gave it all up for you. And all I ask in return is a little respect, a little gratitude, a little, kindness. She said the last word almost in a whisper, and it hung in the air like a heavy weight. I stared at her, unable to find the words. What could I say? That she was wrong? No. Everything she said was true. Bitter, unpleasant, but true. I started, but my voice failed me. I coughed and tried again. I didn't know it was that bad. Of course you didn't, Brent interjected. You were too busy with yourself, your problems, your resentment toward the world to notice how your daughter was suffering. Brent, Yvette said warningly. No, Yvette. Brent shook his head. He needs to hear this. I've seen you change in these 3 years. How your smile has faded, how your energy has disappeared, how you've increasingly turned down corporate events because Daddy might need something. I've watched you slowly transform from a cheerful, active woman to a frazzled, perpetually tired caregiver, all because of him. He pointed at me with an accusing gesture. You're selfish, Orson. You think only of yourself, your comfort, your desires, your pride. Have you ever thought about your daughter? How she feels living with a man who constantly criticizes and humiliates her? What it's like for her to wake up every morning knowing that she has another day to fight your stubbornness and resentment. Brent, that's enough, Tabitha said firmly, taking her husband's hand. You're overreacting. No, I held up my hand. Let him talk. He's right. I shifted my gaze to Yvette. He's right, and you're right. I was selfish. I was only thinking about myself. About how bad I feel without Helen. How everything around me annoys me. How no one understands what I'm going through. I didn't see what I was doing to you. Or maybe I didn't want to see. I took a deep breath. I don't deserve your concern, Yvette. I don't deserve your patience. I don't deserve your love. Yet somehow I get it all, and I've never appreciated it. Yvette looked at me and I saw mixed feelings in her eyes. Disbelief, hope, weariness. Why now? She asked. Why are you saying this now and not before? Why did it have to come to the point where I had to lock you in the basement for you to hear me?" "Because I'm a stupid old man," I answered. "Because I'm used to being right about everything. Because admitting my mistakes is harder than continuing to pretend they don't exist." I got up from my chair and walked over to her. "Yvette, I can't promise that I'll change overnight. I can't promise I'll stop nagging or criticizing. Old habits die hard, but I can promise that I'll try, that I will listen to you, that I'll appreciate what you do for me." I gave her my hand. "Can you give me another chance?" Yvette stared at my hand for a long minute. Then she looked at my face. "I don't know, Dad," she said quietly. "I don't know if I can believe anything will change this time. We've been through this before. You promise to get better, and it gets better for a day or two. And then it goes back to the way it was." Her words hurt me because there was truth in them too. How many times after a particularly big fight had I promised her I'd be better? And how many times had I broken that promise, returning to my usual nagging and criticism? "You're right," I admitted. "I'd broken my promises before, but now I've really realized that I could lose you, and that scares me more than I can express." "I need time," she said after a pause. "Time to think, time to be alone." "Of course," I lowered my hand. "I understand." "I'm going to Sandra's," Yvette continued, referring to her old friend. "I'll stay with her for a few days, and then I'll decide what to do next." "Yvette," Aunt Pearl looked at her worriedly, "are you sure this is a good idea? Leaving your father alone?" "He'll be fine," Yvette said firmly. "He's not as helpless as I sometimes think he is. And he needs time to think too. Time to figure out whether he really wants to live with me on terms of mutual respect or to go on as before, but without me." She turned to the others. "Thank you for your support. I apologize for dragging you into our family problems." "Don't apologize, dear," Aunt Pearl hugged her. "We're here for you, always." "Call me when you're settled in at Sandra's," Tabitha said, also hugging Yvette. "And if you need anything at all, just let me know." "Thank you," Yvette smiled weakly. They began to say their goodbyes. Bill came up to me while Yvette was talking to the others. "Don't screw up this time, Orson," he said quietly. "She deserves better. If you can't give her that, let her go." I nodded, unable to find the words to answer. Soon everyone was gone. Yvette went upstairs to pack her things. I was left alone in the living room, among the remnants of holiday decorations. The happy birthday garland seemed now a bitter irony. What kind of holiday was this? I sat back in my chair and closed my eyes. My mind raced through the fragments of the conversation, Yvette's accusations, Brent's words. They were right, all of them. I'd turned into an exact replica of my father, a grumpy, disgruntled old man who pushed his loved ones away. Half an hour later, Yvette came downstairs with a small suitcase. "I'm leaving," she said, stopping in the doorway of the living room. "The food is in the refrigerator. Your medication is on the kitchen table, with instructions on when and what to take. Sandra's number is on the refrigerator if anything happens." "Thank you," I said. "Yvette, don't, Dad." She held up her hand, stopping me. "Not now. I need some time." I nodded. She turned to leave, but stopped and looked at me again. "You know what the saddest thing is?" she said. "I still love you, despite everything that's happened, despite the way you treated me. You're my father, and I love you. I just don't know if that's enough." With those words, she walked away. I heard the front door slam, the engine of her car start, the rustle of tires on the gravel of the driveway, and then there was silence. Complete, utter silence. The kind of silence I hadn't experienced in this house in 3 years. I was alone, just like I'd wanted to be all along. Alone in a big, empty house full of memories and regrets. Slowly, I got up from the chair and went into the kitchen. On the table were the pills, neatly organized by day of the week with detailed instructions in Yvette's handwriting. Next to it was Sandra's cell phone, magnetically attached to the refrigerator. In the refrigerator, containers of food signed breakfast, lunch, dinner. She thought of everything. Even in leaving me, she made sure I didn't go hungry, that I took my medication, that I could contact her if necessary. And what have I done for her? What had I given her in those 3 years except grief and disappointment? I opened the cabinet where Yvette kept her alcohol. There was a bottle of whiskey, a gift from Roy last Christmas. I'd never opened it because Yvette said I couldn't have hard alcohol with my medication. Right now, I didn't care about the medication. I pulled out the bottle, found a glass, and poured myself a whiskey. I drank it in one gulp, feeling the scalding liquid running down my throat. Poured another. With the bottle and the glass, I returned to the living room and sat down in my favorite chair. I drank slowly, savoring each sip, looking at the pictures Yvette had put up for the party. Here I am young with Helen on our wedding day. We are both smiling, full of hope and plans for the future. Here's little Yvette sitting on my shoulders. I'm holding her legs and she's laughing with her head tilted back. Here we are all together at a picnic. Helen spreading a tablecloth, me grilling meat, Yvette running around with a ball. A happy family. When did it all go wrong? After Helen died, of course. She was the glue that held us together. She had a way of softening my edges, finding compromises, smoothing over conflicts. Without her, I've become a bitter old man and Yvette a tormented nurse. But it's more than that. I've always been a complicated man, straightforward to the point of rudeness, intolerant of other people's mistakes, certain I was right. Helen accepted me because she saw the other sides of me, my loyalty, my reliability, my willingness to protect my family. But over time, the bad traits began to outweigh the good, especially after her death, when I was left alone with my bitterness and frustration. And the result was that my daughter couldn't take it anymore and left, probably forever. If I don't change, if I don't find the strength to admit my mistakes and correct them, I will lose the last close person I have left. The thought of that was so painful that I poured myself another whiskey and drank it down. The alcohol dulled the pain, but it couldn't erase the realization of how unfair and cruel I'd been to Yvette. She'd sacrificed everything for me. Her career, her love life, her happiness. And I couldn't even thank her for making dinner. What a fool I am. What a selfish, blind, stubborn fool. The bottle gradually emptied and my thoughts grew darker and darker. I remembered every time I had offended Yvette, every time I had criticized her for no reason, every time I had pushed away her attempts to get closer. There were so many that I felt ashamed I wanted to fall through the ground. When the bottle was half empty, I rose from the chair, staggering. I needed some fresh air. I walked out onto the porch and sat on the steps, looking up at the darkening sky. The sun was already setting, coloring the clouds pink and orange. In that moment, I swore to myself that if Yvette gave me another chance, I would do everything I could to change, to become a better person, to earn her love and respect. And if she didn't, well, then I'll take it as a well-deserved punishment for all my years of selfishness and callousness. And I'll live with that for the rest of my life, knowing that I've ruined the last relationship I have left. With that thought, I went back into the house, closed the door, and felt truly alone for the first time in years. The first morning without Yvette was strange. I woke up late, with a headache from the whiskey I had drunk the night before. There was an unusual silence in the house. No dishes rattling in the kitchen, no humming, no phone calls. The silence I had longed for all these years now seemed oppressive. I got out of bed, wincing at the pain in my temples, and staggered to the bathroom. I looked in the mirror at a wrinkled old man with red eyes and disheveled gray hair. No wonder Yvette was tired of me. On the kitchen table, I found a container of breakfast and a note from Yvette. Heat in the microwave for 2 minutes. Don't forget to take your pills. Even when she left, she took care of me. And me? What did I do for her? Breakfast, Scrambled eggs and bacon and toast was delicious, but I could barely taste it. My mind was reeling with yesterday's events, Yvette's words, Brent's accusations. They were right. I was insufferable, selfish, ungrateful, and yet I demanded respect I didn't deserve. After breakfast, I picked up the phone and dialed Yvette's number. It kept ringing, but she didn't answer. Finally, the voicemail came on. "Hello, you've reached Yvette Packard. Leave a message after the beep." "Yvette, it's me," I said after the beep. "I just wanted to see how you were doing. And to say I'm sorry. About yesterday. For everything. Call me back when you can." I hung up, not really expecting a call back. She made it clear she needed time. Time away from me. The day dragged on endlessly. I tried to do the usual things, reading the newspaper, watching TV, fiddling with the radio in the garage. But nothing could distract me from thinking about Yvette and the way I had treated her all these years. That evening I called her again. It went to voicemail again. "Yvette, it's me again. I just wanted to see if you were okay. I'm fine, don't worry. I took my meds. The food you left is delicious. I miss you." The last words were hard for me to say. When was the last time I told my daughter I missed her? I don't remember that. The second day was like the first. I tried to occupy myself, but my mind kept returning to Yvette. I went over our conversations, our fights, our rare moments of peace. How could I have been so blind? How could I not see that I was destroying our relationship with my behavior? By the evening of the second day, I called Yvette again. It went to voicemail again. "Yvette, it's me. I realize you don't want to talk to me, and I respect that. Just, let me know you're okay. At least text me. I'm worried." After that, I sent her a text message. "Yvette, please let me know you're okay. I'm worried. Dad." There was no response. On the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I found in the phone book the number of Sandra, Yvette's friend, where she was staying. I called. "Hello?" Sandra's voice sounded wary. "Sandra, this is Orson Packard, Yvette's father. I just wanted to see if she was all right. She hasn't been returning my calls." "She's fine, Mr. Packard," Sandra replied dryly. "She's just not ready to talk to you." "I understand," I said, holding back my irritation. Old habits die hard, and my first reaction was outrage. How dare my daughter ignore my calls? But I suppressed that impulse. "Could you please tell her I called? That I'm worried about her?" "Of course," Sandra's voice softened. "I'll tell her." "Thank you," I said quietly. "And, tell her that I miss her, and that I'm sorry." "I'll tell her, Mr. Packard," Sandra promised and hung up. That evening I received a short message from Yvette. "I'm fine. Don't worry. I need more time." At least she responded. That's something. I spent the fourth day putting the house in order. I'd never noticed before how much work Yvette did every day. The dust on the shelves, the dirty bathroom, the scattered things, she cleaned it all up without a word of thanks from me. Now, doing the cleaning myself, I felt ashamed of my neglect. While cleaning, I came across a photo album that Yvette had recently gone through for a slideshow. I sat down on the couch and began flipping through the pages. Pictures of my life with Helen and Yvette. Happy moments that I once treasured and then forgot in my bitterness and disappointment. Here's Helen holding newborn Yvette in the maternity ward. Here I am teaching little Yvette how to ride a bike. Here we are all together at the beach building a sandcastle. Here's Yvette in her graduation dress, and Helen and I standing next to her, proud and happy. These last pictures were taken after Helen's death. Yvette and I at Christmas. She smiles at the camera. I frown. Yvette and I in the park. She tries to put her arm around my shoulders. I stand tense, not responding to the hug. Yvette and I at her 40th birthday party. She blows out the candles on the cake. I sit next to her with a disgruntled expression. In all of these photos, I saw the same thing. Yvette trying to reach out to me and me pushing her away. Yvette tries to give the appearance of a normal relationship, and I ruin her efforts with my sullen look and discontent. Yvette still loves me, and I How do I feel? And then it hit me. I love her too. I always have. I just haven't learned how to show it. I'd forgotten how to express it in words and actions. Instead, I criticized, nagged, pushed away, all the things my father did to me. I became the person I had always despised. On the fifth day, I decided to take action. Yvette wouldn't return my calls, but there was one opportunity to meet her. Every Friday, she went to lunch at a small cafe near her work. It was a tradition she had mentioned once. If I counted the days correctly, today was Friday. I hailed a cab and headed downtown. Laura's Cafe was a small, cozy place with a terrace overlooking the park. I arrived early, at 11:30, and took a table in the corner where I had a good view of the entrance. At 12:15 she arrived, punctual as always. In a strict business suit with a folder of documents under her arm. She looked tired, but she kept a straight face. My daughter, strong and independent despite everything I'd put her through. Yvette took her usual table by the window and ordered something from the waitress. I gave her time to get settled and then got up and walked over to her table. "Hi, Yvette," I said quietly. She looked up and her eyes widened in surprise. "Daddy? What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you," I answered. "You haven't been answering my calls and I thought, if I could sit down." She hesitated but then nodded, pointing to the chair across from me. "How did you know I was going to be here?" she asked when I sat down. "You said you come here every Friday," I tried to smile. "See, I listen to what you say sometimes." "Sometimes," she echoed, and I could hear the bitterness in her voice. "Yvette." I took a deep breath. "I came to apologize. In person. Looking you in the eye. For everything I've done. For everything I didn't do." "Dad." She shook her head. "We've talked about this before. I need some time." "I know," I said quickly, "and I respect that. I'm not asking you to come home right now. I want you to know that I get it. Realized what I've been. I realize what I put you through." Yvette looked at me questioningly. "And what exactly did you realize?" "That I was selfish," I answered. "That I was only thinking about myself, my problems, my resentments. That I was taking out my frustration with life on you. That I didn't appreciate everything you did for me. That I stammered for words. That I'd turned into a carbon copy of the father I'd always despised." Her face softened. "Go on. These 5 days without you have been, hard," I admitted. "Not because there was no one to make me breakfast or remind me to take my pills. It was because I missed you. Your voice. Your laughter when you're on the phone with your girlfriends. For your singing in the shower even though I always grumbled that you made too much noise." I saw a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "I never told you how much you mean to me," I continued. "How proud I am of you. Your strength, your patience, your kindness, which hasn't run out despite everything I've done to exhaust it. I've never thanked you for everything you've done for me, for caring, for your patience, for the love I didn't deserve." I reached across the table but didn't touch her, leaving the choice up to her. "I know I can't change the past. I can't bring back all the days I hurt you with my words and actions. But I can try to change the future, if you give me the chance." Yvette stared at my hand on the table for a long moment. Then she looked up at my face. "Why should I believe that anything will change this time?" she asked quietly. "You've promised to change before, and you've always fallen back into old habits." "You're right," I didn't make excuses. "You have no reason to trust me. I haven't earned your trust, but I'm asking you. No, I'm begging you to give me one more chance. One last chance. And if I fail you again, you have every right to walk away forever." "What's changed, Dad?" There was doubt in her voice. "Why should I believe you really understood this time?" "Because I saw myself through your eyes for the first time," I answered. "Hearing you talk about your life with me, I realized what I put you through. and it opened my eyes. I don't want to be that person anymore. The man that my own daughter has to lock in the basement to get a break from his poisonous temper. Yvette smiled weakly. Yes, it wasn't my finest moment. It was exactly the moment I needed, I said. A jolt. For me to finally wake up and see what I'm doing to you, with us. The waitress brought Yvette's lunch, a salad and a sandwich. I declined the order, saying I was just keeping her company. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now, I said when the waitress left. I realize you need time. I just wanted you to know that I realize my mistakes, and I'm willing to work on myself to fix them, if you give me that chance. Yvette nodded slowly, considering my words. I don't know, Dad, she finally said. I want to believe that you'll really change, but I'm afraid of being disappointed again. I'm afraid of coming back a week later and finding everything's the same. I understand your fears, I said. They're completely valid. I haven't earned your trust, but I'm asking you to give me the opportunity to earn it. She chewed her sandwich thoughtfully, looking at me with an appraising gaze. What exactly are you suggesting? She finally asked. Maybe we could start small, I suggested. You don't have to come home right away. Maybe we could just see each other once in a while, have lunch together, talk, gradually rebuild the relationship. That sounds reasonable, she agreed. But I want you to understand that I'm not coming back until I'm sure you've really changed. Not in words, but in deeds. Not for a day or two, but for good. I understand, I nodded, and I'm ready to prove to you that I'm serious about changing. However long it takes. Yvette finished her coffee and looked at her watch. I have to get back to work, she said, gathering her things. Sure, I got up with her. Thanks for listening to me. We walked out of the cafe together. It was sunny and warm outside. People were hurrying about their business, not paying attention to us. I'll call you this weekend, Yvette said. Maybe we could meet on Sunday, have a longer talk. I'll be waiting, I replied, feeling the warmth of hope spill into my chest. She nodded, and then, unexpectedly, she stepped forward and hugged me. Briefly, but tightly. I hugged her back gently, afraid to spoil this moment of intimacy. Bye, Dad, she said, pulling away. See you later, Yvette, I said, watching her walk away toward her office. I stayed standing on the sidewalk, staring at her until she disappeared around the corner. Then I took a deep breath and headed for the cab stand. There was a long road ahead to fixing everything I'd ruined over the years. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Hope that not all was lost. That I could still make things right with my daughter. That I could still be a better person. When I got home, I sat down at the kitchen table and wrote a list of everything I needed to change about myself. It was long, very long, but I was determined to work on each item. For Yvette, for us, for the sake of not finally becoming a carbon copy of my father, a lonely, bitter old man who'd been abandoned by everyone close to him. I didn't know if I could change enough to bring Yvette back. I didn't know if I could earn her forgiveness and trust, but I did know that I would try my best, because she's the only thing I have left, the only person who still loved me despite everything I'd done, and I couldn't afford to lose her because of my stubbornness and selfishness. Yvette deserved a better father, and I was going to be one, even if it was the hardest task of my life.